You don't belong here, and you know it. Turn around before this gets worse.
I have a board meeting in 5 minutes. Let go of my arm.
Ma'am, maybe we should step outside.
Don't. You're holding the CEO of this company.
CEO? Not
Let's
for
finish
long.
this.
She stood in the lobby of her own company headquarters, briefcase in hand, dressed in a crisp white suit that spoke of power and precision. But to the woman pointing at her, the security guard gripping her arm, and the man in the blue suit watching with folded arms, she was invisible. Not as the CEO, not as the woman who built this empire from nothing, just another black face that didn't belong. They told her to wait outside. They refused to listen. They called security. And in that moment, as phones rose to record her humiliation, Zara Williams made a decision that would change everything. 7 minutes, that's all it took for the hunters to become the hunted. But what happened in those 7 minutes? And what did they cost the people who underestimated her?
Zara Williams woke up at 5:47 a.m. that Tuesday morning, 3 minutes before her alarm. It was a habit she'd developed over 15 years of clawing her way through an industry that never expected her to survive, let alone thrive. The brownstone in Brooklyn Heights was quiet, except for the hum of the city waking beyond her windows. She moved through her morning routine with the precision of someone who understood that every detail mattered. The sharp line of her blazer, the confidence in her stride, the way she held her head when entering a room full of people waiting for her to fail. By 7:15 a.m., she was in the back of a car heading toward Manhattan, reviewing acquisition documents on her tablet. Williams Tech Solutions had just secured a $340 million contract with 3 Fortune 500 companies. At 42 years old, Zara had built her cybersecurity firm from a freelance operation run out of a basement apartment into a powerhouse with offices in 6 countries. The briefcase beside her, embossed with her initials, ZW, contained the final signatures that would close the deal. Today was supposed to be a celebration. She thought about her grandmother as the car crossed the bridge, the woman who'd raised her in Atlanta after her parents died. "Baby girl," she'd said when Zara was 12, watching a news report about a black businessman being arrested in his own store. "The world's gonna test you harder than it tests anybody else. You gotta be twice as good to get half as much. But don't you ever, ever shrink yourself to make them comfortable." Zara hadn't shrunk. She'd expanded, dominated, conquered. The headquarters of Williams Tech Solutions occupied 4 floors of a glass tower in Midtown. Zara had personally overseen every aspect of the design, from the open-concept workspaces that fostered collaboration to the meditation rooms that acknowledged the mental health of her 800 employees. She'd built a company culture that prioritized diversity, equity, and innovation. 70% of her leadership team were women. 45% were people of color. She'd proven that excellence and inclusion weren't opposing forces, they were amplifiers. But Zara also knew something that gnawed at her in quiet moments. Not everyone celebrated her success. The car pulled up to the building at 8:42 a.m. She was early for the 9:30 meeting with the board and the new VP of Operations, Derek Hutchinson, a white man in his 50s who'd been brought in 3 months ago by 2 board members who'd questioned whether the company needed more traditional leadership at the executive level. Zara had opposed the hire. She'd been outvoted. Something about Derek unsettled her. The way he spoke over women in meetings, the way his eyes glazed over when she discussed inclusive hiring practices, the way he'd started forming alliances with the old guard on the board. She stepped out of the car, briefcase in hand, her white suit catching the morning sun. Confidence radiated from her like heat. She'd scheduled a stop at a satellite office downtown first, a surprise visit to check on the team working on the new contract. But as her phone buzzed with a message, her plans shifted. "Zara, we need to talk before the meeting. Come to HQ first. Derek." Something about the message felt off, terse, demanding. She texted back, "On my way, conference room B, 20 minutes." As Zara approached the glass doors of her building, she noticed something unusual. The usual morning receptionist, Maya, a bright young woman who always greeted her with warmth, wasn't at the desk. Instead, there was a temporary security guard she didn't recognize, a white man in his 30s with a permanent scowl.
Behind the desk stood Jennifer Caldwell, the white woman who worked in HR, someone Zara had previously flagged for making microaggressive comments to employees of color. Zara's instincts prickled. Something was wrong. She reached for the door handle, but before she could pull it open, Jennifer stepped forward, blocking her path. Her expression was cold, territorial. "Excuse me," Jennifer said, her voice sharp. "Can I help you?" Zara paused, confused. "I'm sorry. The building doesn't open to the public until 9. Are you here for a delivery?"
For a moment, Zara didn't understand what was happening. The confusion was brief, like static before a signal clarifies into something devastating. Jennifer Caldwell, an employee in her company, was asking if she was a delivery person at her own building, wearing a tailored suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Jennifer," Zara said calmly, though her pulse had begun to accelerate. "It's me, Zara Williams. I own this company." Jennifer's face remained impassive. "I don't know who you are. Do you have an appointment?" The words hung in the air like poison. Zara's jaw tightened. She'd encountered racism before. She'd built a career navigating it. But there was something particularly sinister about being erased in the space you'd created. Still, she maintained her composure. Getting emotional would only play into the narrative people like Jennifer wanted to construct. "I'm the CEO," Zara repeated, her voice steady but firm. "Check your system. Zara Williams." Jennifer glanced at the security guard, who stepped forward with a hand hovering near his belt. "Ma'am, like she said, the building isn't open yet. You need to wait outside." "Wait outside?" Zara's voice carried an edge now. "I'm not waiting outside of my own building. Call Derek Hutchinson. Call anyone from the executive team. They'll confirm who I am." But Jennifer was already shaking her head, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling security. This is getting out of hand." "Security is already here," Zara said, gesturing to the guard, "and you're about to make a very serious mistake." The guard stepped closer, his hand now fully resting on his belt, near where handcuffs gleamed under the fluorescent lights. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step outside now." Zara's heart pounded, but she refused to move, refused to be pushed out of her own space. She reached into her briefcase for her ID, her building key card, anything that would end this absurd confrontation. But the moment her hand dipped into the bag, the guard's entire demeanor shifted. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he barked, grabbing her wrist. The touch was rough, authoritative, designed to intimidate. Zara's breath caught, not from fear, but from the shock of violation. She was being manhandled, in her building, by people she employed. "Get your hands off me," Zara said, her voice low and dangerous. But the guard didn't let go. Instead, he pulled her arm behind her back, forcing her against the reception desk. Pain shot through her shoulder. Her briefcase clattered to the floor, documents spilling across the marble. "You're making this worse for yourself," Jennifer said, her voice dripping with false concern as she filmed the encounter on her phone. "Cooperate and everything will be fine." Cooperate. The word ricocheted through Zara's mind like a bullet. How many times had she heard that word weaponized against black people? Cooperate and you won't get hurt. Cooperate and this will go smoothly. Cooperate, as if the problem was resistance rather than the system itself. A small crowd had begun to gather, employees arriving early, some with coffee in hand, all with phones out, recording. Zara recognized some of them, people she'd hired, people whose careers she'd championed, people who walked past her now with wide eyes and silence. No one stepped forward to help. No one said, "That's our CEO." Derek Hutchinson appeared then, descending from the elevator in his blue suit, arms crossed, watching the scene with an expression that was impossible to read. Relief flickered through Zara. Surely Derek would end this. But then his eyes met hers, and she saw something that made her blood run cold. Satisfaction.
"Derek!" Zara called out, her voice strained as the guard continued to restrain her. "Tell them who I am." Derek approached slowly, deliberately, like a man savoring a moment he'd orchestrated. He stopped a few feet away, studying her with clinical detachment. "I don't know who you are," he said quietly, his voice carrying just enough to be heard by the gathering crowd. "But you're clearly trespassing." The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that for a moment Zara couldn't breathe. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. "You're lying," Zara said, her voice shaking now, not from fear, but from rage. "You know exactly who I am. You texted me 20 minutes ago." Derek pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and showed it to Jennifer. "No messages. Maybe you have the wrong building." It was a masterclass in gaslighting. The crowd murmured, phones continued recording, and Zara understood in that moment what was happening. Derek had been consolidating power, turning board members against her, planting seeds of doubt about her leadership, and now with her humiliated and physically restrained in front of dozens of witnesses, he was positioning himself to take over. "This is insane," Zara said, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. "I built this company. I'm the CEO. Someone call Maya at the front desk. She knows who I am. Call anyone from the executive team. They'll confirm who I am." But Jennifer just shook her head sadly, as if dealing with someone delusional. "The CEO is in meetings all morning. She wouldn't be showing up unannounced, causing a scene." "I'm not causing a scene. You're creating one." Zara's voice cracked, and she hated herself for it. Hated that they were forcing her into the stereotype of the angry black woman. Hated that her emotions, justified, righteous, would be used against her. The guard leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear. "I'm going to escort you out now. You can walk, or I can carry you. Your choice." What happens when the system you built becomes the weapon used against you? When the power you earned is stripped away in front of the people you empowered? Zara looked around at the faces staring at her, some shocked, some uncomfortable, some coldly indifferent. She thought about her grandmother, about every black person who'd been arrested in their own neighborhood, questioned in their own car, killed in their own home, because someone decided they didn't belong. And then, through the glass doors, she saw him, Marcus Chen, her chief technology officer, arriving for work. Their eyes met. Recognition flooded his face, followed by horror. "That's Zara," he shouted, sprinting toward the door. "That's the CEO! What the hell are you doing?" The guard hesitated. Jennifer's face paled. Derek's jaw clenched. And in that moment, Zara felt the shift, the crack in the facade. She straightened her spine, despite the guard's grip, and looked directly into Jennifer's phone camera. "My name is Zara Williams. I am the founder and CEO of Williams Tech Solutions, and every single person involved in this is about to lose everything."
Marcus burst through the doors like a man possessed, his face flushed with fury. "Get your hands off her right now!" The security guard finally released Zara's arm, stepping back with dawning confusion. Jennifer's phone shook in her hand, her face draining of color as the reality of what she'd done began to crystallize. Derek remained frozen, his calculated composure finally cracking at the edges. "Marcus," Derek said, attempting to regain control, "there's been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Marcus's voice echoed through the lobby, drawing more employees from the elevators. More familiar faces emerged from the growing crowd. Keisha Johnson, the VP of Finance. David Park, the head of security, the actual head, not the temp guard who'd grabbed Zara. Amy Rodriguez from legal. One by one, the people who actually knew Zara, who'd built this company alongside her, stepped forward with expressions ranging from shock to absolute rage. David Park moved immediately to Zara's side. "Ms. Williams, are you hurt? Do you need medical attention?" Zara rubbed her shoulder where the guard had wrenched it back, but shook her head. Her eyes were locked on Derek, on Jennifer, on the temporary guard who now looked like he wanted to disappear into the marble floor. I need, Zara said, slowly, deliberately, an explanation. And I need it now. The lobby had gone silent except for the hum of phones still recording. Everyone understood they were witnessing something unprecedented, something that would be talked about for years. Derek cleared his throat, attempting one last play. Zara, obviously there's been a terrible mistake. The temporary security guard didn't recognize you, and Jennifer was just following protocol. Protocol? Zara's laugh was sharp, humorless. Your protocol is to physically assault people who try to enter the building? Your protocol is to ignore someone who identifies themselves as the CEO? Your protocol is to stand there filming while security brutalizes a black woman in a suit carrying a briefcase with her initials on it? She picked up her briefcase from the floor where her documents lay scattered, contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars spread across the ground like trash. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone watching. You texted me, Zara continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. Your text is right here. And I'm sure when IT pulls the security system modifications from this morning, they'll show exactly who requested Maya's schedule change and who authorized a temp guard without proper briefing. David, I want that investigation started immediately. David Park nodded grimly, already on it. Jennifer tried to slip toward the back of the crowd, but Keisha blocked her path. Oh no, you're not going anywhere. You filmed this? You participated in this? You stood there and told everyone the CEO was trespassing. I didn't know. Jennifer's voice cracked, tears starting to flow, not from remorse, Zara suspected, but from fear of consequences. I was just doing what Derek told me to do. He said there might be someone trying to impersonate you, and I should be vigilant. Vigilant, Zara repeated softly. The word tasted bitter. Vigilance. Is that what you call it? Vigilance? Tell me, Jennifer, would you have treated a white woman in a suit the same way? Would you have assumed she was a delivery person? Would you have called security on her? The silence that followed was damning. Jennifer's tears fell harder, but she had no answer, because they all knew the answer. Zara turned to the crowd, to all the employees watching with phones raised. Let me be absolutely clear about something. What happened here this morning wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was racism. Calculated, systematic racism designed to humiliate me and remove me from power. And it almost worked. She paused, letting the words sink in. Almost. Zara looked at Derek, her gaze unflinching. You wanted my company. You couldn't beat me with merit, so you tried to destroy me with shame. You forgot one critical thing, though. What's that? Derek asked, his voice hollow. I built this company on the principle that everyone deserves dignity and respect, regardless of their background, which means I also built a community of people who believe in those values. You thought you could turn them against me. Instead, you just showed them exactly who you are. Zara raised her voice, addressing everyone in the lobby. Emergency board meeting, conference room A, right now. Everyone who witnessed this, I want your statements on record within an hour. She turned back to Derek, Jennifer, and the security guard. And as for the three of you, you're suspended pending termination. Security will escort you out. And yes, I'm aware of the irony. But the story was far from over, because what Zara did next would change not just her company, but the entire industry. The emergency board meeting lasted 17 minutes. That's how long it took for Zara to present the evidence, for the board to watch the footage from multiple angles, and for the unanimous decision to be made. Derek Hutchinson, Jennifer Caldwell, and the temporary security guard were terminated immediately. No severance, no recommendations. Their access revoked, their reputations destroyed by their own actions, captured in high definition by dozens of phones. But Zara didn't stop there. By noon, she'd called a company-wide meeting. 800 employees gathered in person and virtually, watching as their CEO, shoulder still aching, white suit wrinkled from the morning's assault, stood before them and told the truth. This morning, I was physically removed from our building by security because 3 people decided I didn't look like I belonged. They saw a black woman and made assumptions. They saw someone they could erase, dismiss, humiliate.
And the scariest part? If Marcus hadn't arrived when he did, if my own CTO hadn't recognized me and spoken up, I might have been arrested. In my own company. For the crime of existing in a space I built. The room was silent, the weight of her words pressing down on everyone present. I want to talk about what we do now, Zara continued. Because firing 3 people isn't enough. This morning exposed something deeper, a vulnerability in our culture that I didn't see. People walked past me while I was being assaulted. Good people, people I respect. They walked past because intervening felt risky, because they weren't sure, because it's easier to pull out a phone than to stand up and say, "This is wrong." She paused, making eye contact with faces throughout the crowd, faces of every color, every background. So here's what's changing. Effective immediately, we're implementing mandatory anti-racism training for every employee every quarter. Not the performative kind where you watch a video and sign a form. Real training. Uncomfortable training. Training that forces us to confront our biases and our complicity. And anyone who refuses participates in their own termination. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Second, Zara said, her voice growing stronger. We're creating an anonymous reporting system for discrimination of any kind. Racial, gender, disability, all of it. And reports will go directly to an independent third-party investigator, not HR. Because what happened this morning started long before today. Derek had been building a culture of exclusion for months, and the systems I put in place didn't catch it. Keisha Johnson stepped forward. We're also restructuring the board. 2 members who voted to bring Derek in despite your objections will be asked to resign. We're replacing them with leaders from underrepresented communities who actually understand what's at stake. The applause started then, building from a few people to a thunderous wave, but Zara raised her hand for silence. I want to be clear about something else. This morning was traumatic. It was degrading. It triggered every fear I've carried my entire career about what happens when you succeed in spaces that weren't built for you. But I refuse to let it define me or this company. Instead, we're going to use it. She pulled up a slide on the screen behind her. The footage from this morning has already gone viral. 6 million views and counting. The media is calling. Investors are calling. Everyone wants to know what happened and what we're going to do about it. So we're going to tell them. The slide changed, revealing a new initiative. The Williams Foundation for Workplace Equity. We're launching a $10 million foundation dedicated to fighting workplace discrimination. We're going to fund legal defense for employees who face what I faced. We're going to support research on systemic racism in corporate America. We're going to create a playbook that other companies can use to actually, not performatively, but actually build inclusive cultures. And we're going to name every company that refuses to implement these changes. The applause returned, louder this time, infused with something that felt like hope. Zara looked out at her employees, at the people who'd chosen to stay, to build, to fight alongside her. What happened this morning could have destroyed me. It could have destroyed us. Instead, it's going to be the catalyst that changes everything. Because I refuse to be erased. I refuse to shrink. And I refuse to let this moment be just another viral video that people watch, feel bad about, and forget. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the morning finally beginning to lift. This is personal, but it's also bigger than me. Every black person watching this knows the fear of being seen as a threat just for existing. Every person of color has a story about not being believed, not being valued, not being seen. Today, we're saying no more. Not here, not anywhere, not ever again.